Senator from Oklahoma is recognized.
Mr. President, we're getting ready to turn the page into 2026, which is hard to process in some ways because so much has happened in 2025. I have a habit when I approach the end of the year to look back and also take a quick look forward of where things might be going. But just thinking about this year, we've had more votes in this body this year than any Senate since 1976. We've been in session more days than any Senate in the past 50 years, and we've actually confirmed more nominations in the first year of a new presidency than any Senate in decades and decades. There's been a lot of work that's happened in this chamber this year. And just reflecting back on that, I see what still needs to be done, but I think there is some benefit just for us to be able to pause for a moment and think about what has already occurred in this incredibly busy year. We talk a lot about the Working Families Tax Cut Act that we passed this past summer. The regulations are being written out by the IRS and multiple others to be implemented for this coming tax season. But there's so many things that actually went into that, and the debate around it was so noisy. I think people lose track of the things that were actually in it. I talked to some teachers in Oklahoma who have no idea that next year when they buy school supplies, that next year they'll be able to write off a deduction for the school supplies that they purchased because of the Working Families Tax Cut Act. We're literally treating every classroom as if it's their own small business and they have their own small business expense and they can deduct it from their taxes, their expense for their classroom. That's never happened before, and we think that'll be a tremendous gain for classrooms all over the country and to be able to be a direct help to teachers. That's just one of the many things that were in the bill. Things like no tax on tips to be able to help service-related employees all over the country. No tax on overtime, which is especially beneficial to our first responders and our law enforcement that work so much overtime, including Capitol Hill Police that are right here. There's a lot of overtime hours, and that's going to be a direct help to them. I was talking to a person at a checkout line not long ago that was a senior adult, that was a working senior adult, that as I'm checking out, she said, "Hey, that bill that y'all passed, that's going to keep me from paying taxes on my income after Social Security, after I'm receiving that, that's going to be a huge help to me." And she just couldn't thank us enough because as a working senior, she just needed a little bit of help. There's so many different things that we were able to get done in that Working Families Tax Cut bill. We're able to provide a new child tax credit. We're able to provide a tax incentive to businesses that actually provide quality child care for their employees so that so many employees that want to have their kids near them at work could actually have that opportunity. I'm grateful that we're able to do some things that are substantial for a lot of those families. Within the past hour, it's kind of funny even walking the floor on this, I had someone that just made a random comment. They had no idea of my connection to it, but they just made a random comment about a part of the bill that I actually helped author in that Working Families Tax Cut bill, and that's the area where we deal with full expensing. Now, if you're not a business owner, you have no idea what that is. But if you own a farm or a ranch or a business, you know exactly what it is. If you've got big capital expenses, think for a farm or a ranch, a tractor or a truck. Think for manufacturing a big piece of equipment. When you're able to purchase that, that's a business expense. But in the past, in the tax code, you'd have to write that business expense off over several years. You do eventually get to write it off, but all the expense is actually in the first year when you had to buy it. You were prohibited from writing it all off in your first year. I was able to get that changed in this bill in a section that I authored so that those businesses and farmers and ranchers that in the year they purchase that big of equipment, they can also write it off on their taxes that 1 year rather than having to stretch it out in several years. It's exactly the same to the federal government as far as income, what's coming in tax revenue to the federal government. It's no difference. But to that business and that farm and ranch, it's a huge difference for them. Many of those small businesses that have a big capital expense, literally, if they have a big capital expense that year, they also have to go to the bank and borrow money to help pay their taxes that year because it takes several years to be able to depreciate that out. That's gone as of this year. That's no longer going to be an issue. Literally every economist has said that is one of the most significant parts of the bill as far as for economic activity across the country, because it incentivizes more people to buy another piece of equipment to be able to use. It makes their business more efficient, and guess what? The person who sold them the piece of equipment also gets more business. It literally churns our economy and gets us up into a higher speed economically, providing more jobs and more opportunity for more people. I also worked a lot on a section on the bill that a lot of people don't talk about, but it's very important to me, and I found it's been very important to a lot of other folks as well in the nonprofit sector. In 2017, we made a change in the tax law. That change doubled the standard deduction, simplifying tax filing for about 91% of Americans. It's much more straightforward than it used to be. But the trade-off for that was, if you donated to a nonprofit, if you don't itemize your taxes, that nonprofit donation is no longer tax deductible for you. Meaning, the top 9% of people in the country in income that itemize their taxes, they get to write off their nonprofit donations. No one else does. Well, that may not seem like a big deal, but in the past decades, nonprofits have lost $20 billion going into nonprofits. It's a very significant issue. America has 3 safety nets. The third of those safety nets is government. The first safety net is the family. The second safety net are churches and nonprofits. The third safety net is government. Government can never keep up with all the issues and the social needs. We got to have strong families. We've got to have strong churches and nonprofits. They're the ones that are actually taking care of the homeless and the hurting and the hungry. They're the ones that do it every single day. They're the volunteers that are out there that are supported in what they're doing by usually small dollar donations. So as of January the 1st of next year, we made a permanent change in tax policy to say if your family donates to a nonprofit of your choice, pick whichever one you want to. If your family donates to a nonprofit, as of next year, you'll be able to write off up to $2,000 of that donation off on your taxes, whether you itemize or not. The goal is stronger nonprofits, which means more people getting assistance in their community face-to-face. Government writes checks. Nonprofits meet people face-to-face, mentor, help in a way that government never can. So this body made a decision together in that Working Families Tax Cut Act to say we're going to do something to be able to strengthen our nonprofits all around the country. And I'm very proud to be able to be a part of that. We started this year, we forget about this, but we started this year by passing a very simple piece of legislation. It says if someone is illegally present in the country and they've committed a crime, if they're arrested, they have to be removed from the country. As strange as it is, that didn't used to be the law. And we literally had people arrested that were illegally present in the country and then just released right back out again. Many of those individuals committed crimes over and over and over, and were just released again, released again, released again. This body voted this past January and said that's not going to ever happen again. We're never going to have individuals that are victims of crime. That's just this repetitive nature of it over and over again. We've done a lot to be able to just talk about the value of every single child. This body and my colleagues that are here will know that I speak out often on this issue. I'm one of those crazy people that think children are valuable. All of them. I don't think some children are valuable and some children are disposable. I think all of them are valuable. So we've done a lot to be able to just talk about this issue and to be able to bring it up. Several bills that we've actually worked through, the MOMS Act, which bolsters access to resources and assistance to help moms and children thrive. We've actually tried to be able to work through multiple different things dealing with conscience protections. A bill that I have that actually works to be able to protect the conscience rights of those that are in the medical profession and going through training. As odd as it sounds right now, in medical training, you're now brought to a point that it's assumed you're going to be part of an abortion as a part of your medical training unless you opt out of it. And then even at that point, they could still bring you and say, you've got to be able to choose right now. I can tell you stories of medical students that have actually reached out to our office and said they literally were brought into an abortion as a part of their medical training and were told if they left out, they would have a mark on their educational record saying that they abandoned a patient, even when they had said they do not plan to ever do elective abortions in their practice ever and want to be able to opt out of it. Listen, there's a simple way to be able to do this. Change the perspective on it to say that it's automatically everyone is opted out. If you want to do elective abortions, you'd have to choose to opt into that in your residency. But the abortion folks want to make sure as many people as possible are trained to be able to do elective abortions because they want to keep that going, violating the conscience rights of many people that go into medicine to save life, not take it. So we're working through the process to be able to help protect that. Cindy Hyde-Smith and I, the great senator from Mississippi, she and I are working on a bill called the Restore Act to be able to deal with infertility issues, to be able to find multiple different ways to be able to walk alongside families. We have a bill that deals with pastors and nonprofits who have been targeted by the IRS for simply speaking their mind. It should not be so in America. Senator Jackie Rosen, my Democratic colleague from Nevada, she and I lead the Antisemitism Task Force here in the Senate. Antisemitism should not be a partisan issue. That should be a nonpartisan issue. And it should not be a part of who we are as America. But the problem is we have rising anti-Semitic conversation happening all around our nation right now, from the left and from the right. And it's disheartening. In a nation that values every single person, and for many people that actually speak out openly about diversity in our nation and protecting the rights of opportunity for every person, no matter where they're from, to have equal opportunity and equal ability to be able to rise, seem to have no problem at times ranting anti-Semitic tropes, sometimes flippantly and sometimes in a hostile way. We've had folks just during this year in public settings talking about how much they love Hitler or making jokes about the gas chambers. Folks talking about organized Jewry, or folks talking about that if you support Israel, maybe you have some kind of brain virus. With folks chanting from the river to the sea and liberation by any means. With college campuses even this year where a Jewish student was confronted with someone saying, if I see another pig female Jew, I will drag you away, rape you, and throw you off a cliff. This is the United States of America. Stand for the rights of every individual to have any faith of their choosing and to live that faith openly without fear. So why is it that when I go to Hanukkah festivals, there have to be so many police there? You know why? Because some people hear these dumb statements and they do dumb things, acts of violence that come out of that. Just this year, we had 2 Israeli embassy staff members that were murdered walking out of an event here in Washington, D.C. Just this year, we've had in Boulder, Colorado, a gathering of folks that were there just to be able to stand in support of Israel, that someone came by with incendiary devices and literally set a group of Jewish people that were peacefully speaking out for Israel, they set them on fire on the street. Just this year, a Chabad Jewish center was set on fire overnight in Florida. That's in our country. And I could go on, not to mention the incredibly painful first day of Hanukkah attack in Sydney, Australia. Anti-Semitism has no place in our nation. Now, I understand you have a First Amendment right to be able to say any dumb thing you want to say. but I also have the right to be able to call it out for what it is. It's anti-Semitic hatred. Don't try to shape it in some way to be able to say, this is my right to be able to speak out. It is. But it's also my right to be able to call it out. And to say in my party as a Republican, we have no place for anti-Semitic hatred. And in our nation, we should make no space for someone to be able to intimidate someone because of their faith or their background, no matter who they are. This year we were able to pass a bill assisting rural hospitals with $50 billion. $50 billion. I don't know what the rural hospitals are like in everybody else's state, but I can tell you what they're like in Oklahoma. They take care of some great people, and they're dedicated folks in the medical profession, but they struggle because they don't have a high patient count. They're not trying to do intricate surgeries. They're trying to help somebody that just got hit on the road in an accident, or someone who had a heart attack, or someone who had a stroke. They're trying to stabilize them and help them. Yeah, they're going to transfer them to a big hospital somewhere else, but they're desperately needed all across rural Oklahoma. But they really struggle to be able to keep up because of the incredible price of medical technology now. So we just passed a bill dealing with $50 billion to be able to help rural hospitals all over the country get caught up, and then to be able to maintain what they're doing. We were able to help rural nursing homes as well. Rural nursing homes that were actually facing a Biden-era rule that the Biden-era folks, they told me they meant well by it, but basically they were requiring a bunch of additional 24-hour nursing assistants and nurses to be able to be on site at any point in those nursing homes. Now, that sounds like a great idea, but understand there's physically not that many nurses that live in rural areas across the country. What that really was going to mean, though they seemed to have meant well, what that really meant was they were going to close down a bunch of rural nursing homes all over my state, distancing people at one of their most vulnerable moments of life away from their families. That's a terrible idea. This body was able to flip that and to say, we're not going to allow that to be able to happen. We're going to change that to where that's different. This body just passed the National Defense Authorization. Thankfully, we've now gone 6 decades, and every single year we've passed it. And in my state, we're able to do several things to be able to make sure we're protecting national security in the work that we continue to do in Oklahoma. Tinker Air Force Base is the largest Air Force depot that we have in the country. It's critical for the maintenance of all those aircraft and the strength of our warfighters. Tinker Air Force Base has struggled in civilian hiring, though we have thousands of people there, not because we don't have great Oklahomans that want to serve our nation as a civilian at Tinker Air Force Base, because of foolish hiring rules that were set aside and created that slowed down the process of hiring. Well, in the National Defense Authorization, I was able to put in an amendment to be able to get that changed, and so that we're able to actually do the civilian hiring that our nation requires, so that we can actually continue to be able to defend ourselves and our nation anywhere in the world. We want to make it very clear we have the most lethal, most moral fighting force in the history of the world, and we want to make sure we're strong and ready enough that no one ever would challenge us, ever. That's what brings us greater national security. This year, in a moment probably no one here saw, and that's okay. We all have different issues in our states. In a solemn moment in April of this year, we gathered on the Capitol grounds, right over there, around the enormous 100-year-old trees that are planted all over Capitol grounds. And we were able to plant a tiny little live oak that most folks probably won't even notice, but you will. Next to that little live oak, it's just about that tall now, is a little plaque saying it's a seedling from the Oklahoma City survivor tree. 30 years ago, this past April, a person with deep hatred for the federal government drove up to the federal building in Oklahoma City with a truck loaded with fertilizer and diesel fuel, ignited it, and killed 168 people that day. It's 30 years ago this year. Across the street from the federal building, there was a tree that was just a gangly little tree that was in a parking lot, quite frankly, growing up through the asphalt. The detonation itself literally twisted the tree across the street and blew every single leaf off of it. Literally blew every single one of them off of it. No one paid any attention to that. Obviously, through the recovery and all that happened in trying to recover families and taking care of people and trying to stabilize the community, no one really noticed until the next year, literally a year later, that twisted bent tree budded. It survived that blast. And it has become the signature of Oklahoma City, the survivor tree. It's still doing well, by the way. A seed pod was taken from that tree, was grown in some soil, and then was transplanted here to the Capitol grounds so that every person that walks past it for centuries from now will walk past and see that little plaque and remember those who were lost, those who survived, and those who were changed forever in April of 1995. We got to do that this year because we never want to forget. We've gotten a lot done this year. There's still a lot more to do next year. We've got to finish appropriations. We've got a lot of work to do on housing costs. We've got a lot of other bills that are still pending. But we've been able to accomplish much. I understand full well we're divided. I understand full well that we don't agree on everything. I get that. But where we can find agreement, let's get moving. Let's solve the issues. One last thing. Many folks in this body know my friend Jim Inhofe. Jim Inhofe served in this body literally for decades. He used to sit right there. Jim Inhofe and I, several years ago, worked on a new formula for veterans hospitals to partner a veterans hospital with another hospital so they would share resources. So the veterans hospital would never have to keep up with other hospitals. They could share resources and physicians in a brand new way. It had never been done quite like this before. We were able to partner together to be able to do that in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Oklahoma State's hospital and a new veterans hospital would rise up right in conjunction with it so the best researchers, the best equipment, the best physicians could share that space back and forth so that our veterans would never hear someone say, well, we're going to have to send you to a different VA hospital, a different place to be able to get that type of care. They could get it right there at home. It's a new model that I'm pleased the Veterans Committee and other leadership, including my colleague Jerry Moran that's sitting on the floor here today, was a part of. But for Jim and I to be able to work through that process was an honor for us to be able to get that in Tulsa. Never did I ever think that a couple of years later, this year, I'd be dedicating that hospital as the James Mountain Inhofe Tulsa Veterans Medical Center after my friend Jim Inhofe passed away. That hospital that he and I worked together on now bears his name. And veterans in the days ahead will continue to get quality care in Northeast Oklahoma from the legacy of Jim Inhofe, but also from the commitment of this body to say we're going to do what it takes to take care of our veterans as we continue to do. So I'm grateful to this body for the work that we get done because it matters to people. But we have a lot more to do. So let's get after it. I yield the floor.